obviously not a Latin American country, but it shares something with Latin America. For example, with Brazil, we are members of BRICS, so maybe some problems like democratization and development problems we have in common, as well as Professor Peters said that about possible resentment against China. Maybe we also share this problem as well. So here I formulated some points about Russian-Chinese cooperation. The Russian-Chinese relations are actually very close now. They are officially called relations of strategic partnership and cooperation. And this is not mere words, because the whole system of relationship from top to bottom, beginning from annual meetings of top leaders, premiers, all kinds of committees and subcommittees, such mechanism has been established. But here I wanted to say why Russia and China cooperate so closely. Actually, some people, especially in China, quote the 1950s when the two communist giants cooperated as the best years of Soviet-Chinese relations. But in fact, at that time, they were based on mainly on ideology, but not on, say, economic or any other interests. By the way, at that time, the official word was not strategic partnership, but brotherly friendship. And this is, we should be very cautious about it, because in the Russian language, the word brotherly relations means equal relationship. But in the Chinese language, there is even no word for brother. There are only words for elder brother and younger brother. So when they say brotherly relations, that would be in Chinese something like relations between a younger brother and an elder brother. So when you build brotherly relations with China in Latin America, for example, you should be very cautious about it, because someone is going to be elder brother and someone is going to be younger brother. There are actually a lot of misconceptions about China in Russia as well as in the West.
You are older brother.
For example, we in Russia call China our great Eastern Oriental partner. This is, of course, a Western misconception, because if you look at the map, China is not to the east of Russia at all. China is to the south of Russia, and even to the west of some parts of Russia, if you see the Far East, Vladivostok and so on. So you know, this is another thing, that perceptions and misconceptions is another thing one should be quite cautious about. So, why Russia needs China? First of all, China and Russia share, or China shares Russia's vision of the future multipolar world, and that's why both countries support the existing system of international law. This is very simple, because Russia and China are, like, say, other BRICS countries, are strong enough to have their own opinions about foreign policy, for example, and international situation, but they are not strong enough to support their positions on their own, so they tend to cooperate. And of course, in the, for example, Security Council, Russia and China are equal to the United States, but in all other ways they are not equal to the United States. So of course they are interested in maintaining the existing system of international law, where the United Nations and the Security Council is the top coordination organ. So both Russia and China reject what they call the outside interference into the internal affairs. They both support fight against terrorists, because both Russia and China have their terrorist problems in some of their regions. They cooperate closely on various conflicts and hotspots all over the world, and basically have no difference in that. Generally thanks to cooperation with China, Russian politics becomes better rounded and less one-sided. And this helps Russia to become one of the centers of global influence, as the Russian government wants to do. Russia and China cooperate in Central Asia because both countries share basic interests there, which is first stable government, second maintaining secular regimes there, and third economic development of these countries, because only on this basis stable secular regimes can be maintained. China can play an important role in the fulfillment of Russia's strategic goal, the development of underdeveloped areas of Siberia and Far Eastern regions, which are border regions to China. China also supports Russian efforts to change the international financial system. China, on its part, also needs Russia, but actually nobody can warn me about time, so maybe you can do it so that I don't speak for too long.
You have 5 minutes left.
Right. So Beijing is interested in stable Russia, although probably not in a very strong Russia as the Soviet Union time, but this is kind this under the current situation cannot happen. So China, but on the other hand, Beijing sees a stable Russia that is capable of becoming an independent power center as serving its own interests and values Russian partnership. Russia also serves as one of the guarantors which is capable of ensuring China's free, what is China's official term is free and independent foreign policy. China is interested also in the stable situation on its borders with Russia, as well as it is interested in stable situation on its borders with all other countries, most of its neighbors, and because this can play a role in the development of China's border areas. Russia also constitutes economically an extremely important source of various commodities that China either cannot obtain from other countries, such as armaments, for example, or else can purchase in only limited quantities. This is mainly raw materials such as oil, lumber, and other raw materials. Russia plays an important role in the development of the economy of China's northeastern provinces. People who visited China's northeastern provinces can easily see it for themselves. And China also values cooperation with Russia and Central Asia, and because they share interest in that part of the world. All this does mean that Russia and China have no difference, or have no potential differences, I would say. But these differences are usually solved, especially in the field of trade, because of the solid base of general political relationship. However, I summed up here some points. For example, nuclear reduction. As you know, China does not even announce the amount of nuclear weapons it has. China claims that at the moment it has very limited number of nuclear weapons, but unless it's going to declare how many it has, in some time in the future it can hinder the Russia-US talks on nuclear reduction, because both countries will be cautious about about the Chinese level of nuclear weapons. China is not striving to restrict the number of middle and short-range missiles. China, like Russia, is interested in a non-nuclear Korean peninsula, but it is much more hesitant than Russia about the unification and any kind of regime change in North Korea, which can lead to unification. China is unable to support the recognition of Abkhazia and South Ossetia because, and it failed to do so despite our strategic partnership, and Russia understands this quite well, because China, of course, has its own separatism problem. China is a natural supporter of market liberalization as a strong economy and free trade. Actually, it has never been a supporter of free trade all the time. When I point out to the Chinese that in the 19th century they actually started a war against free trade. Also, it was opium trade at that time. They say, of course, that the situation has changed. But at the moment, they are very strong supporters of free trade, and Russia is more hesitant about it. Actually, Russia is one of the countries, or strange countries in the world, where the trade balances, where trade is quite balanced with China. We have about 50-50 exports and imports. But this is, of course, all because of raw materials exports. China competes with Russia as a consumer of foreign investments, and actually I read a report 2 or 3 days ago that Russia overcame China, according to some of to that report, in investment climate. But I think this is very strange because I don't really feel it. China and Russia is competing in the development of their border regions, which are close, northeastern part of China and the Russian Far East and Siberian regions. China is interested in Russia as a supplier of raw materials and sales market. Sure, but according to my information, I still have 3 minutes. That's right.
Okay.
And China is more now interested in exporting manpower, capital, and technology. Of course, this is the problem with Latin America as well, as we were told today. And the last point is growing nationalism, both in Russia and China, can hinder their relationship. But the kind of nationalism is different. Russia has a growing kind of domestic nationalism against people who don't look like Russians. This is a thing that we can see in Europe almost everywhere. But in China, it's more like nation-state nationalism. We read some books now and some reports, some analysis of Chinese experts, including military experts, that China should proceed with, or even change its foreign policy, make it tougher, make it look like that of the United States, build bases, military bases abroad, and this tendency already influences. Also, Chinese say it's not the official position, but we look that we can see that it influences the official foreign policy. It is becoming tough on its neighbors. Before China, for example, officially included usually only Taiwan issue into China's core international interests, but now it's also South China Sea disputes and the territorial dispute with Japan, for example. So this, as was discussed in a different panel yesterday, causes reaction from its neighbors, and also who see the presence of the United States in the region as a balancing factor. And for Russia and other, I would say, neighboring countries, it's not a very positive situation, because Russia would not like to put itself into the position of choice, of choosing between various partners like China, India, China and Vietnam. And we hope that China is going to continue its foreign policy, which was quite modest before. So I'm going to stop here, and then we have about 10 or 15 minutes for discussion, I think. And I'm going to use my, as we say in Russia, my administrative resource and ask the first question. First two questions. One to Professor Han, who spoke first about Chile. I thought it was an amazing paper. But I think that I heard that Professor Han said that there were mostly white people lived in Chile, and that's why the country was easier to govern. He said Guanli in Chinese is govern. So does it mean that, you know, other people, so I mean, the governability of people depends on the skin color. It reminds me a little bit the theory of Heraclitus, of ancient doctor in Greece, who said that the governability of people depended on the character of the people, and the character depended on the climate where this or this nationality lived. So, and the second is a general question to all participants about the connection between democratization and growth. In Russia, we had a very interesting paper some times ago, which claimed of two economists who claimed that democratization in an underdeveloped country where the level of GDP per capita is less than, say, $8,000, can hinder the development, can hinder development, economic development. But on a higher level of development, if the GDP is higher and also the state is more effective, then it can stimulate the development, the economic development. So what do you think of that? I think this problem is relevant to Latin America. Thank you. So do we have any other questions?